Hello to you, Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. Time to talk about what is cranking, what's happening in the tropics, and it's been pretty busy all week long. Of course, we've been monitoring closely, keeping an eye on Hurricane Erin for the last several days. It blew up to a monster Category 5 over the weekend, and that's been our strongest system in the Atlantic Basin so far this season. We've had 5 named storms, from Tropical Storm Andrea to Tropical Storm Barry, Chantal, Dexter, and now we are dealing with Hurricane Erin. At least it's not a Category 5 anymore. It's down to a Category 2, but still dangerous, and it will have some impacts to parts of the east coast of the U.S., particularly the Carolinas. Next name on the list is Fernand. Hopefully we won't have that one anytime soon, but the average date for the first F named storm in the Atlantic Basin, about 10 days from now, around August 29th. So we are in that period where we'll likely start to see the F named storm, and it could come by the end of the week. So Hurricane Erin will brush by the east coast of the U.S. with biggest impacts likely in the Carolinas. The outer banks of the Carolinas already now under tropical storm warnings and storm surge warnings. We are expecting a very high rip current risk, big waves, the threat for coastal flooding, and strong winds, maybe over 50 to 60 miles per hour for parts of that Carolina coast. So even though we're not expecting a direct landfall of Erin over the U.S., we are going to have the risk for some of those impacts that I just named. So you can see that Erin is a huge hurricane. It's slightly weaker, but it has been growing in size. So as far as the track, it's actually going to continue pushing more to the north and then race to the northeast by late week around this big Bermuda high, that area of high pressure. So it's actually going to follow that weakness in the high pressure, and that is going to lift it to the north. So notice it's staying away from the east coast of the U.S. It's staying away from Bermuda. It's going to kind of curve right in between the two, and it is still going to bring some impacts to parts of the U.S. East Coast. So at this point, Hurricane Erin down to 105 mile per hour winds, pressure 958 millibars, and it is moving to the north-northwest around 10 miles per hour. So remember, it was moving more to the west. Now it's moving more to the north, so that should keep it away from making landfall in the U.S. You can see by Wednesday evening, Thursday morning, it is getting fairly close to the outer banks of North Carolina. So for that reason, we do have a tropical storm warning in place for the Carolina coast. That includes Wilmington and other parts of the Carolina coast for maybe some wind gusts, like I said, 50 to 60 miles per hour, that very high rip currents risk, and also the threat for some very large waves. So we've got a lot of threats from Erin, even though it is not going to come crashing into the east coast of the U.S. All right, as far as rip current risk, it's not just the Carolinas, but it's all up and down the eastern seaboard where we have a very high risk for those dangerous, potentially life-threatening rip currents. So all the way from New England through the mid-Atlantic down to that Florida Atlantic coast. So this is going to be a situation that we're dealing with for the rest of the week. So this just reminds you that you don't have to have a hurricane make landfall to have some pretty big impacts from it. So that is what we are going to be dealing with for the next 2 to 3 days. All right, our Fox Weather tropical model showing Erin getting very close to that Carolina coast Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, and Thursday morning. Notice the eye here, the eye wall, those outer rain bands may start to impact the Carolinas for Wednesday night and for Thursday morning. Heading into Friday and Saturday, Erin finally starts to push northeast away from the U.S. and away from Canada. So it will start to leave us alone, but overall there will be some impacts, at least to the end of the work week. If you're wondering if it's heading to the Houston area, the answer is no on that one. We won't have to worry about Erin, but we could see more systems developing behind Erin, so we'll have to watch those closely. As far as the threat for the big waves for the East Coast, notice I think the biggest risk is going to be Thursday morning right around that Carolina coast, maybe some waves up to around 25 feet. You know, that's pretty dangerous. So we are definitely advising you, if you are going to be in the Carolina area right along the coast, please be cautious. There will certainly be some dangerous conditions over the next 48 hours. All right, as we look ahead, of course, Erin is not going to be be impacting the Gulf or the Houston area. But as we look ahead to other potential systems, we've already got two more to watch. We've got this disturbance here now in the central Atlantic. This is a tropical tropical wave with now a 60% shot for development as it heads closer to the northeastern Caribbean islands by this weekend. So the big thing to note here is that yesterday models were keeping this a little bit farther to the south, maybe moving over Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Hispaniola, and maybe getting close to moving into the Gulf. But today models have kind of shifted this future system a little bit farther to the north and west. So I do think it will eventually make more of a turn to the northwest and north, similar to Erin, and that would keep it out of the Gulf. Some more good news for us in Houston. All right, as far as the next disturbance behind that one, this one already is being called Invest 99L. It's got a 30% shot for development. It is still way out there in the Atlantic, in the eastern Atlantic, still close to that western African coast, and we'll have several days to watch it. But the first disturbance that I just told you about will get close to the Leeward Islands, Northeast Caribbean Islands this weekend. Not looking very organized on our GFS Futurecast, but definitely something to watch as we get into the weekend. So we've had so far this season 5 named storms, 1 hurricane, 1 major hurricane. We generally average about 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. As far as formation zones, August, September, they can pretty much pop up anywhere. Tropical depressions, tropical storms, hurricanes. Highest risk will be that MDR, main development region, central eastern Atlantic for the rest of this month, and that will still be a hot spot for September as well. Of course, the peak of hurricane season right around September 10th. We're getting closer to that, so please be on guard, stay alert. Even when things are quiet, make sure you've got the right insurance, review it, make sure you've got your hurricane gear ready to go so that you will be ready.